Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds, to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, and sometimes we just review books, like today. That's what we're going to be doing. Alright, guys, I hope you all are doing well. Today, specifically, the book we are talking about, and we will be talking spoilers, so let me put this warning up because it's a book club meeting. I have a channel book club in case you guys are new. The channel book club is called the Midnight Book Society, and this is an official meeting of our club. So today, what we're going to talk about is Off Season by Jack Ketchum, and I'm really excited to talk about this. This was my second Jack Ketchum read, and frickin' it did not disappoint because, yes, it was awesome. I gotta say, that's a spoiler to my thoughts already, but I'm gonna just right off the bat let you know that this was freaking awesome, and I rated it 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. All right, we've got Bob Apples here. How you doing, Bob? Bob Apples says, I still can't bring myself to read The Girl Next Door, but Ketchum is awesome. I did read The Girl Next Door a few months ago, and I'm really glad. I know that sounds terrible. Oh my god. I am glad I read it because I think it's a very powerful, emotional story, and I think it's a very powerful book in general. Not to keep using the word powerful, but I mean, what other word can you use to describe it? But I understand people who don't want to read it or people who try to read it and then can't, continue on with it because it is some heavy stuff. And speaking of heavy stuff, so Ketchum's just like a heavy guy, I guess, because I feel like Off Season was pretty heavy in a different way. Heavy in a cozy way. If that makes sense. I don't know. It makes sense to me. We've got Death by Paperbacks is here. Katie, hey, how you doing? I'm very excited to talk about this book with everyone. We've got Cool Gamer here. Hello. We've got Helco here. Hi. And we've got DJ here. I always say your screen name wrong every single time. I try to pronounce it in my head and then I'm like, when it comes time to say it, I never can say it out loud. So I'm sorry about that. All right, guys, I do want to know what you're reading while we wait for more people to join in because it's the very, very beginning of the stream. So shout out what you're reading and or watching if you're into watching movies. Of course, if you guys are followers of my channel, you may have heard that I am hosting a big readathon and watchathon this month, and it's my Slime Summer Slashers readathon and watchathon. And I'm very, very jazzed because it's all about slashers. And I feel like summer is the perfect time for slasher books and slasher flippin' movies. So I'm very, very pumped to just be doing this whole event this month in June. So it's been a blast. Currently, just to let you guys know what I'm reading, I am reading Brother by Anaya Alborn. And where's the other book I just finished? Of course, it's not near me. This is the story of my life. I thought I had it nearby. The other book that I just read, which is a semi-slasher, I guess. It's a book about an article about a slasher movie and then like the anniversary screening of a slasher movie. It's a very unique, very short novella, and that was called 20th Anniversary Screening by Jeff Strand. So I read that yesterday. I started and finished it. Very short, like 91 pages, so it's not super impressive. But right now, I'm reading Brother. I also started that last night, and I'm about 126 pages in. A lot of character development, but I like it. It's eventful character development, if that makes sense. Now, character development is one of the criticisms of Off Season, by the way, and we'll get into that a little bit. I've got some Goodreads reviews pulled up, and I also have like some screen captures of some reviews, and we'll see what different people have to say. And also, besides shouting out what you guys are reading and watching, you can also feel free to shout out what you thought about Off Season in the comments. Did you love it? Did you think it was fast paced? Did you have any criticisms of it? What would be your star rating? You can drop any of that below, and I'll be happy to read it. Katie says she's about to start Cirque Berserk and currently watching her way through the Hellraiser franchise. I love Hellraiser. The first Hellraiser is my favorite ultimate horror movie. Like, if I could only pick one, if someone was like, pick one, you got to pick a favorite, I would pick Hellraiser. I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. That is my favorite, but it always has been, and I really just love the like, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering. And all the quotes are just so good. Just finished Flowers in the Attic and started Brain Eaters. That sounds cool. I have never read Flowers in the Attic, but I feel like I should. I know my friend Kelly had been doing a read through of the series with a few friends, and I missed it. Like, I missed the beginning of the read along where she did book 1 and then book 2, book 3, book 4, because there's a lot of books in the Flowers in the Attic series. But yes, I kind of missed the beginning of it, so I'm just like, it is what it is. Daisy's here. Hey, Daisy. She's also reading Brother right now. So yeah, I'm very much loving it. I don't know what page you're at right now, Daisy, but I'm only about 100 and something pages in, but it's really, really well written. And I can already tell that I'm obviously enjoying it as it goes, but I think it's going to get even better. And it's definitely got some sadness to it and some like heaviness to it too. So that seems to be a theme with my books, heaviness. Some ways it's more of like the gore heaviness, other ways it's like emotional heaviness. So that's like the two kinds of heaviness, in my opinion, when it comes to horror books. Bobbles, like bobbleheads. No. Bob Apples says, I just watched American Horror Stories season 1. Overall, a good anthology series. So y'all are gonna think, and there is my southern stuff coming out, y'all. You guys are gonna think that I am crazy. I've only watched a couple of seasons of American Horror Story, like what seasons? Like, not like the famous popular seasons. Like, I've never watched all of season 1. I've never watched the season that was set in New Orleans, which is ridiculous, really. I've never watched like the Asylum series season, and I've never watched like the clown one. Like, isn't there a clown one or something? Anyway, I watched like the later ones, like the Apocalypse one, which was okay. I actually like that one quite a bit. The really political one, that one was freaky. That season was really scary. So yes, that is a heavy show in my opinion. And last year during Hurricane Ida, we were hit here in New Orleans by Hurricane Ida, and a lot of people lost power for like days and days and days. Like, we were out of power for at least 6 days here. And we had this like, I guess, I don't know what, like an external charger that we were able to charge in our car and plug like devices into the device once it was charged up from the car. So we were running our laptop off of it, and we were also using like our data signal to stream the latest season of American Horror Story, which, by the way, I did not like the very last season, which was split into 2 different stories. I did not like it at all. I thought it was just all over the place. Just, it didn't stand on its own, and it wasn't very strong. Oh, I did see this slasher season. Daisy is shouting out the slasher season of American Horror Stories, and yes, I watched that one. So I did watch that one, and that one felt like really quick. Like, the whole season moved so fast in that particular season. It just, like, the episodes, it was like boom, 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 boom. I like that one too because, slashers. That would be appropriate if anyone hasn't seen that season for, my slasher event. That would be perfectly appropriate to check out this very month for Slime Summer Slashers. I like the alliteration. You guys might have noticed if you've been following me a little bit. I just love alliteration. All right, so let's start to get into off season. Just to reiterate, I loved this. It was a pleasant surprise. However, it wasn't like that big of a surprise in the sense that I really did enjoy his writing style. When I read The Girl Next Door, I really enjoyed that book despite it being emotionally heavy. Pardon me. And very hard hitting in general. I knew I was gonna cough. Let's go through some good reads. You guys shout out what you thought. Let's go through some good read stuff and see what other people thought. Sorry, I had to cough for a second again. All right, Daisy, I have your review here. I hope that's okay. So, Daisy also read off season with us. She rated it 4 stars, and she said, crazy and deranged cannibals running amok in a small coastal Maine town. Yes, please. This was gory to the max. I don't do trigger warnings, so look them up for this book before you read, because, yes, just to go off of what Daisy said, there is a lot of triggers, like in terms of gore and sexual stuff and all kinds of things and killer kids and just carnage left and right, really. She said, "This was a thrill read, and I could see why it was banned and axed off by some people when it first came out. It's not for everyone. It touches on subject matters that some might find to be offensive. But then again, if you're a true horror reader, then this book should not offend you, and you should know that the author is a controversial one and not in a bad way. He's definitely controversial, I think. I don't think everyone loves him." She says, "With that being said, things I loved about this were the atmospheric setting, location, location, location. The descriptions of the town to the coastline and the cabin were cinematic to me, and I love that." I do agree, Daisy. That's a very good observation about, this cinematic kind of flair, I think, to the writing, to where you could almost picture this being a, a movie playing out on screen. It did read like that for me, too. She also liked the gore. Need I say more to describe? She also liked the characters. Even though he was only in the book for a few pages, I loved Old Man Donner. That's a great character, yeah. Like, I liked his descriptions of everything. And she says his descriptions of seeing the cannibal family were just the best. I liked the bonus story at the end of the book named Winter Child. Oh, you read that part? I kind of stopped, to be honest. I should have read that little excerpt, but I did not go that far. She said, "I love the snowy elements. The ending was superb too." I guess I'm gonna have to check that out and see if that's, interesting. But I like that you liked that little excerpt at the end. Also, another fun thing and interesting tidbit at the end was the author's note. If you guys read the uncensored version, the author's uncut and uncensored version, I should say, officially, he has a note at the back of the book where Ketchum talks about, how this was edited down when it was first released, and he was just having such a tough time with the editor, going back and forth, arguing, like, should this stay in? Should that be removed? This and that. And it was like a battle. And, he had to make some concessions because it wouldn't have gotten published if he didn't. So, one of the big things, and this is huge spoiler territory. So, if anyone is just peeking in right now, we are about to talk big spoilers here. We're talking about spoilers in the very ending of the book. So, please tune out if you have not read the book and if you don't want to know what the ending is. I'm going to talk about the spoilers in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, spoiler time. You've been warned. So we have a big character at the end of the book, Nick. Nick goes through hell to try to save, who is it? How do you pronounce her name? Margie, I think it is. He tries to go save her, and the police are also like kind of on the way, and there's chaos and everything's like wild and no one knows what's going on, and the police accidentally shoot Nick and kill him. In Ketchum's uncensored version. In the original version, there's like a line that says that he survives. And like, he just made it or whatever. And I think that leaves a lot more hope for the reader, a lot more hope in the story that, like, everything's going to wind up okay. Maybe they'll wind up together. Maybe they'll come out stronger on the other side. To where I kind of like the bleak ending, only because I feel like it's more realistic. It's very emotionally hard hitting. Not to keep using the word hard hitting over and over again, but I find that to be the case. Bob Apple said off season is great. Agreed. Now I know this is a good. I've actually read your review, Monster Blood. I believe I screen captured it unless I forgot. But Monster Blood gives Off Season a 3 out of 5. I know you were expecting to like it more, I think, from what I remember from what you wrote on your review. Please feel free to elaborate below. By the way, guys, check out Monster Blood's YouTube channel. Pointing to the wrong side. Great YouTube channel, books galore, and also Goosebumps talk. I mean, who doesn't love Goosebumps talk? So yes, check out his channel for all of that nostalgic goodness. Nostalgic sounded weird when I just said it like with an A instead of an O, it sounded like. I'm totally, I just want to warn you guys, I am in a hangry mood. Today is my diet day where I like restrict my calories. My boyfriend and I are doing this diet and it makes me grumpy as hell and like crazy and I can't think straight. So I do apologize. Those days I feel like I'm not thinking clearly, or at least not 100%, I can still process things, but just, the wheels aren't greased completely, if that makes sense. One from Plagued by Visions. By the way, Juan really likes Jack Ketchum, and he's read a lot of Jack Ketchum Ketchum books. I cannot pronounce things today. And he gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And he does have a discussion up on his channel. And just to kind of read a little part of his review here from Goodreads, Juan says, I first read this as a senior in high school and was simply shocked and transfixed by the violent nature of the story. Now, 10 years later, I was able to appreciate more of what is going on beneath the surface of this tale. Off Season is, above all, a merciless, suffocating, and unbelievably effective study of time and its horrific grip on our mortality. It's everything from the way each chapter is titled after the grueling passing few hours through which the entire story unfolds. I do like that. That's a great point that Juan brings up is like you've got like the time. Literally we know what time it is, like 11:30 a.m. and then like, the next time it's 4:35 p.m. I really do like the way it's formatted as well. That's a very unique way to format the book, and I'm glad he did that because it gives you a sense of how much time is elapsing. It really allows you to be on the journey and to feel kind of tense and like it's a thrilling ride. I was never bored. Now, I will say there are a few reviews here on Goodreads that I have seen that kind of shout out how that they don't think there was good character development, that they think that the characters were hard to connect with, that they're a little bit outdated. I've got like a whole bunch of reviews that say something to similar to that nature. Monster Blood said, it read a lot like a movie to me, and I could see Ketchum's inspiration from films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Night of the Living Dead, and Last House on the Left. There were references to each in the book. For me, Ketchum's writing style doesn't fit my taste. I can respect his work, though, as a founding father of extreme horror in literature. Because, yes, I do think that's a great point. He is like a father of this type of extreme horror that really hits you in the gut and slaps you across the face when you're reading it. All right, so just let me see what else Juan has to say. Juan just breaks things down in such an elegant way. By the way, so I did plug Monster Blood, so definitely check out his channel. Also check out Juan's channel, Plagued by Visions. 100% great YouTube channel, and as I said, so elegant the way he speaks about horror and so sophisticated, and I feel like he can analyze books a lot better than me in a lot more like not fancy in a bad way, but in a fancy way, in a very eloquent way, not just elegant, but eloquent, because just the way he breaks things down is very academic, and I love that. I love academic analysis of books and movies. I'm really decent at academically breaking down movies, but I feel like I still have a little ways to go with like kind of breaking down a book and really getting like into the analysis, like the hardcore analysis where I'm kind of, really breaking it down and really getting philosophical and, really looking at the nitty-gritty and stuff. And I think Juan does such a good job of that type of reviewing. That's why you should check out his channel for sure. By the way, the other review I read, Daisy has an Instagram channel, and her Instagram is awesome. So, Daisy, shout out your Instagram handle in the comments if you want, and I'll pop it up so people can go look you up on Instagram, because I love her Instagram account. Good stuff there. I know my friend Alex, the Bookubus, rated this a 4 out of 5. Alex said it's an excellent read. It did take her a little while to get into the book. She found the initial setup and character introduction to be the weakest point. So this is something I was referencing. Some people, that's their big criticism, is the beginning. I don't know why, but there is some, like, just kind of description, and we're following our main character who's kind of cleaning up this cabin, getting ready for her friends to come over. She's thinking about her past relationship. She's thinking about her career. And so we do spend a little bit of time with that. But to me, I don't know why that didn't bore me. That didn't feel slow to me. Actually, I don't know why I tore through this thing. This book I finished in like just a few hours. I was literally finished in a day, one sitting. I was like, hell yeah, this is great. And you know what? I'm almost thinking, so if you guys are not new to the book club and you actually were with me, we read a book in April, and the book was called Feast by Graham Masterton, but it's also known under the name Ritual. And in fact, if you read it on Kindle, you probably read it under the name Ritual, or if you've seen it on Kindle, you probably have seen it under that name. So Ritual/Feast, whichever name you prefer to use, by Graham Masterton. We had just read that as a group in April. And that is also about cannibals. That's more of like a cannibalistic cult. Now, that is another story that takes a while to get going. So, same idea in terms of they both technically take a little while, but Ritual is way longer in general. It's got a bigger page count. But also it just the exposition in the beginning of Ritual by Graham Masterton, it just felt unnecessary. It felt dragged out. The characters were so ridiculous, like Charlie. Oh, like I couldn't stand the main character Charlie in the book Ritual. So that cannibal story, it just did not hold my attention as easily. It took me over a week to read it, and sometimes I had a hard time wanting to pick it back up. So maybe I liked Off Season so much more, after just having read the previous month Ritual by Graham Masterton, and it was just, I could tell it was going to be a different, more effective cannibal type story than Ritual. Now, I'm not trying to totally bash Ritual. Let me just say, for those who have not read it, I still recommend giving it a chance because the ending was awesome, and the ending is like, worth sticking it out for. I just do think that 150 pages or even 200 pages could have been lopped off, and Ritual would have been tighter, better, more entertaining, more like Off Season. And Off Season isn't short. I mean, but it just felt shorter, if that makes sense, than Ritual did. And I don't know if it's just because I jive more with Jack Ketchum's writing style. However, I will preface this with, I have read another book by Graham Masterton that I liked just fine. That was called Walkers. I liked it better than Ritual overall, but so it's not like I don't like Graham Masterton is the point. But I just think I uber like and uber love, I should even say, even more hardcore than like. I love Jack Ketchum. From the 2 books I read by him, both 5 stars, I'm like willing to read anything by him at this point. So without the author's note at the end, this is only 270 pages. I mean, that's not that short. It's not that long either, but it's a decent length. I just think it was a little more fast paced. But Monster Blood agrees with Alex and says, I agree with Alex. The beginning feels like sort of a typical horror movie setup with superficial character development. I do agree that, like, I guess on the surface, you don't get too much depth into the characters, but I guess it didn't bother me for some reason. I guess I was just along for the thrill ride. I knew what the story was going to be. I knew that it was known for, this gore and this extreme horror element. And so to me, I guess the anticipation of getting there kind of jolted me along and, like, catapulted me along. I don't know, maybe it was the Ritual thing, like I said. I don't know what it is, but I enjoyed it thoroughly and nothing felt slow to me. And again, maybe because, that other book in April did feel slow. Now, Katie agrees with me and says this book, as in Off Season she's referring to, reads way faster than Ritual. So I'm glad I'm not alone there, because Katie also read Ritual with us. And yeah, but the ending of Ritual is good. So I'm not trying to completely bash it. I really did love the ending. And what's with me, by the way, picking cannibal stories for my book club 2 months in a row, it was not on purpose. We're not a cannibal book club or anything. It was a coincidence that I just happened to pick this. And also, by the way, we picked 2 Jack Ketchum books in the last 3 months to read as a book club, so that wasn't on purpose really either. Just, when people shout out suggestions and they're all seconding the book that, like, I suggest, then it just so happens that it ends up in the poll, and then it ends up winning in the poll, and that's how the cards unfold. So I'm kind of glad, though. Let me plug Daisy's Instagram that I teased earlier. So everyone, Daisy Reads 247. Check her out on Instagram. Also, by the way, the wonderful Katie, who I was just, showing her comment as well. She has a blog, and she also has a wonderful Instagram. Her Instagram, you could find her page is called Death by Paperbacks, and her blog, I believe it's under the same name, right, Katie? That's your official URL. Her blog's really awesome. She does book reviews on there. I have to comment on your reviews, Katie. I forget to comment when I look on my phone. I have to go on my computer and comment, so I still got to do that. But I have been reading them, and you're doing a great job. I like to cross promote, like, I really just believe in supporting people who are talented and supporting people who like are just cool and awesome. So I'm just a big believer in supporting people. And that's why I'm always promoting other people on my channel and even people in the comments if I know of, their account, then I definitely want to support them and shout them out. So that's like one of my little beliefs. I don't know. I guess it comes from being like, it's hard to make it back when I was covering wrestling and content creation. It's so hard to like get noticed and get out there. And you do have a few people who will like cross promote you, but like overall, it's like not as tight knit of a community as the booktube and the book community, like on Instagram and on YouTube. It's just not as tightly knit, the wrestling community. In specifics. That one's just, it's tight-ish, but it's just not as awesome in my opinion. I still enjoyed my time there, but I gotta say, that's why I'm so adamant about like supporting people. And yes, Katie confirms, yes, at Death by Paperbacks. Check out her Instagram. Her pictures are fire. Like, that's supposed to be fire or money, whatever. It's not a very good symbol of money or fire or whatever. So anyway, I think what to get back to my friend Alex's review, Alex also has a booktube channel. Her channel is called The Bookubus. Like you could find her if you just type in The Bookubus on YouTube. Wonderful channel. She actually hosted or co-hosted a live stream with me for last month's book club read of, oh my god, Book of the Damned. I almost forgot what I read. I was like, I'm reading so many books. I'm over 50 books for the year. How are you guys doing on your yearly goals? Are you feeling good about it? I'm feeling very good about my yearly goals. 50 plus books right now. I think it might even be like 52 right now, which is awesome. I'm very proud, very excited. But to get back to Alex the Bookubus, her review on Goodreads. In fact, I should put her up so you could see. Although I don't have her whole full review on here. Make sure I'm pulling up the right one real quick. I think here it is. All right, so yes, you could see she rated it 4 out of 5, and you can't see where it says more, but I'm looking at the rest of her review, and it says, this is a bleak and gruesome story, but very well written. I'm glad I read the uncut edition, and it was really interesting to read the authors afterward and learn a bit more about the editing process that took place for its original publication. She also says characters are not particularly likable. The way they are portrayed early on felt quite outdated, but I realized it was written almost 40 years ago. Wow. When she says it that way, like when you just, think of a publishing year on a book, yeah, you'd realize it's an older vintage book, but like when she puts in the actual amount of years, I'm like, wow, almost 40 years ago. That is crazy. And she wrote this she wrote this in 2018, so it is like 40 years old at this point, I think. She said, I didn't put too much weight on the character development because of that. I wasn't initially invested in the character who becomes the main protagonist, but I did find myself rooting for them as the story develops and they are exposed to a world of horror. So I think that's a great review. Wonderful thoughts by Alex. I always love seeing what she thinks about things because she's just a vintage horror expert, in my opinion. Not only adult horror, but YA horror. So again, check out her channel if you like any of that stuff because she is the queen when it comes to having read all kinds of vintage horror that I have not yet read. And I'm always very impressed by the things she's already dug into. All right, I do want to show my friend Crystal's review as well. Crystal also has a YouTube and booktube channel. Her channel is called Fiber Artsy, Fiber. Wait, I'm gonna freaking mess it up, even though I know it by heart. I'm just gonna write it out, so I'm not gonna, for some reason, say it wrong. So Fiberartsy. So yes, Fiber Artsy. This book is nuts, she says. Lots of violence, body horror, and one scene of animal torture, so just prepare yourself before going into it. Overall, I liked it. I read it super fast because it was very action-packed, and I just had to know how it finished. That's how I felt. I did read it really, really fast, and it just felt like a lot of fun. And it felt different from the other books I had read the previous month. And it was just what I wanted and needed at the very beginning to kick off May, because that was actually, I think it might have been my first read of May. I read the very first thing just to make sure I got my book club read done, and it was a blast. And I was like, wow, I feel accomplished. I got a book done in like a day. It was perfect. So yes, Crystal giving it a 4 out of 5 officially. Oh, and our friend Katie, who is with us right now as we speak, and I've referenced her already in the comments, she's here. So Katie rates it a 5 out of 5, and here we agree. We usually agree on books very seldomly do we disagree. We did disagree a little bit. We agreed on the gore, but we didn't agree completely on our rating on Zombie Bake Off by Stephen Graham Jones that we both read recently. But however, I love differences of opinion. I love, hashing out why we each feel the way we do. So it's kind of cool to see me and Katie have a different reaction to a book for once. Because usually, like right now, as you see on the screen, she gave this 5 stars. I'm giving this 5 stars. We usually agree. So here is no different. We agree. She says, off season, this was her second Jack Ketchum book, and she was not disappointed. She loves how brutal and grotesque the cannibals were, and she's so glad she went in with the uncensored version. It was terrifying. Totally 100% agree. And yeah, good analysis there because I really liked the cannibals too. I thought that the gore was so well like described. In fact, I've got a few quotes, and although I do have the paperback copy that I'll hold up right now, so although I have this copy, I actually read it on Kindle. And I don't know why I do. Well, I do know why. So one of the reasons why I do it is one, it's easier to just scroll through my Kindle sometimes versus holding open a book. The other reason is that I really do like to highlight notes on the Kindle, and then when you're done, you can email yourself the notes and print it out. And that's really helpful for like book club discussion. So instead of like I do tab books, as you see here, on Brother, I have one tab because I didn't have my tabs with me when I started reading. I would have had more tabs, but I just didn't have them nearby me, which makes me a little annoyed because now I don't remember what I wanted to tab and it's lost because I've already read past it. But anyway, sometimes I do this, but like, during a book club discussion, if I go towards this page, I have to think for a second to, I mean, it's pointing here. I'm guessing it's the bottom of the page, but I still have to kind of go, on the page and think about the context of the quote to know which part I really meant to highlight and to mark. Whereas this, you mark whatever you want to mark and it prints out the whole quote that you highlighted. So you choose how much of it you highlight, which I love. It makes it so easy to make annotations and notes. So yeah, and this was on Kindle Unlimited. So I don't often like buy a book that I already own on Kindle just to do this, but because this was free, if you have Kindle Unlimited, which I do, I believe it's Kindle Unlimited. Sometimes things are free on Kindle, like so you just use an ebook copy and it's free. But I think this specifically was on Kindle Unlimited. But that's why I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to use it for my notes, which was very helpful. So, page 70 on the Kindle version, I think this is one of the policemen, I think. He thought about those crabs again. One of the most ancient forms of life the crab was, right up there with sharks and cockroaches. In all those years, it hadn't needed to learn a thing about the way the world had changed. Nothing had crossed its mind but its next meal. A simple, straightforward, brutal form of life. How anybody could make a meal of a crab he couldn't figure. The tourists, naturally, thought fresh crab was a pretty big deal, but the tourists were dumb as dirt, not Peter's. He'd grown up in this country. A crab was nothing but a carrion eater, a feeder off the dead, or, as in this case, the dying. Same thing as a vulture. The thought of those claws on her nearly made him shudder. But he was not the kind of man to shudder. He was more the kind of man to shrug and say life was life, and to suppose that, like anything else, the crab had found its evil little niche. I just thought that was such a great passage. Like, wow, like what a bigger statement Ketchum is making there about a whole bunch of different things just by describing a crab, like, eating off of like a dead thing. So kind of off putting, but like it's a natural thing taking place, but he makes it seem very sinister, if that makes sense. And like the crab found its evil little niche. It just such a great line, at least in my opinion. And then on page 166 of the Kindle version, those inside, and this is referring to the people inside the cabin, and this is kind of the point of view of the cannibals outside of the cabin who are watching them from outside looking in. So those inside were not stupid. The hunt was better now. So I just like that. It makes the cannibals even more sinister, that they are excited that this is going to be a little more difficult of a hunt or a chase for their food than normal. To me, that's like, wow, like that excites them. Like that makes them even more scary, in my opinion. Here was another one. Oh, yes, this one's tough. Okay, so this is spoiler territory as well. And this is when so this is Laura, the other girl in the story. So Laura and Margie get taken off and they get brought along with the family of cannibals back to their stinky cave and their disgusting like bloody cave full of trash and all kinds of found things that they were using to live with and just a very terrible seeming cave from the descriptions. And so poor Margie is watching poor Laura. They're both like, not in a good situation. She is watching Laura get tortured to death essentially by this terrible cannibal who's just, taking the most amount of glee from torturing her. So on page 238 of the Kindle version, he was keeping her alive as long as he could, and she participated in her torture by her body's blind attempt to survive it. Didn't she know that it was better to be dead now? What an awful fraud what awful fraud animated her? Her will to live was as cruel as he was. Margie could only pray that when her own time came, she would what? She dismissed the thought. It was evil, stupid. Laura had no choice. She understood that. When her own time came, neither would she. If it came, she added. And there was the proof of it, she thought. She did not believe that they could kill her. Reduced to cinders, she would still want to live, she thought of her sister. So to me, it's just like the will to live is so powerful and like the description of wanting to live, even though it's not even the best, thing right now for Laura to keep enduring on because she's literally being tortured by the second. That was just powerful to me. And then just the way they were describing like the impaling of her tongue and oh my god, like and the way the guy was pulling on it with the fish hook and how he was taking pleasure from it. He was grinning and so these aren't just like plain old cannibals. These are like evil, like terrible, horrible people who are like taking pleasure in this whole ordeal. They're not just eating to eat. It reminds me of not to talk about whales yet again. If you guys, this has almost become a joke now. If you guys are longtime viewers of mine, you might know that I love the movie Free Willy, and which is a totally different type of thing than what we're talking about today. It is not a horror story or a horror movie. It's a like 90s family movie. But what it reminds me of is orcas in general, the whales. Like I like the idea of orcas. I love the movie Free Willy. I love like orca documentaries, but like orcas like hunt in the wild really aggressively, almost to where they play with their prey. So they don't like just go after a seal and eat it like a shark would. Like a shark would just snatch a snail. A shark would just snatch a seal. That is a tongue twister, I will admit. It's not just me. I think many people might have problem saying those words very quickly together. But yes, a shark will just take a seal out of the ocean and come up underneath it and grab it real fast and chow it down. But the orcas, they won't do that. They'll play around with it. They'll like injure it and like pass it along, and it's really horrible. Like I love nature and I love like how beautiful orcas are, but the way they hunt is quite disturbing. But do not let that affect how you feel about Free Willy, because Free Willy was not like a hunter in that nature, in that sense. He was kind of, unfortunately, he was kind of domesticated in a way, but they did try to set him free, and he was, by the time he passed away, he was semi-free, by the way, because of the movie Free Willy. There's this whole big movement to try to set him free. Total sidebar, I am so sorry, but I love doing sidebars that are somewhat related. And like I said, the cannibals just playing around with their food remind me a lot of like orcas and how they hunt, so I think it relates a little bit. But yes, thanks for letting me talk about orcas for a second, even though it's absurd to make that comparison. You never know what you're gonna get with me. Oh my god, my favorite part of the book, and this is gonna make me sound so messed up, like and disturbed. Like, what is wrong with me? I like when Laura, I mean not Laura, Margie bites the cannibal's penis off. It's great. Like it's so satisfying in the sense that like don't let anything happen to this main character. Come on, get out, like find a way to get out of this. And like that the guy was so naive to like, even allow, you know, or even want her to like, put it in her mouth. And like it's the ultimate payback essentially. She bites down and then like she spits it out like It's, like, satisfying because he got what he deserved, like, that's, like, the worst thing ever for a guy, and he got what he deserved, bitch, so it's kinda nice. Daisy agrees with me, I'm not the only twisted one, thank you, thank you so much, and I mean twisted in a nice way, not in a mean way. Daisy says, "LOL, that was great." Yes, I like that part a lot. Only because, like, it just felt so satisfying, like, finally, someone's getting their comeuppance a little bit here. Because although some cannibals were killed back at the cabin before they all retreated back to the cave, I still felt like there were more people who deserved bad things. This family. By the way, there is a sequel. There might even be two sequels. I know that somebody was saying that the second book in the series was available for only like $2 or $3 on Kindle, I think as of a couple of weeks ago. Has anyone read it yet? I'd love to read it, but I'm doing all this thematic reading and it makes like kind of just tossing in a random book kind of difficult. So it is what it is. I would love to have read it right after this, especially because I was in the mindset of the story. But now I'm just gonna have to pick it up at some other time. But I'm very excited about it. But I can't imagine that it'll be better than the original book, the first book. But we'll see. I do plan on reading it, Daisy. Yeah, I do plan on reading it eventually. I just don't know when. I wish I would have had time to fit it in like last month, right after, but I just didn't know. I was actually pretty far ahead in my reading last month to where if I had known that I was going to be in such good shape reading wise, I could have just squeezed it in at the time of the beginning of the month when I read the first book. But, you can't predict the future. So I didn't know. We'll see when I do. I'll have to make an announcement when I do and see if anybody wants to like buddy read or whatever. Okay, good. So I'm also extra not alone because not only did Daisy agree with my observation about the scene with the penis getting bit off, but Katie agrees. Love that part too. You said it perfectly. I don't know how he didn't see that coming. Yeah, like the dude's a moron. Dude, you deserve it. Like you should have known not to even take the chance. Like, come on. Like he kind of warned her, like, you better not. Like he didn't say it with words, but like he was just like, pointing the knife at her cheek or something, whatever he was doing, her throat or something. Anyway, she still got him. She still got him good. I was very happy. So when it describes, well, let me go to it starts here. It says, had she believed in God, she might have felt grateful then. She had prayed for a moment of power over him, and it had been granted her. She closed her eyes and felt her hatred in her jaw like a clenched fist. It is not killing him, she thought, as she brought her teeth together, but it will do. Yeah, it will do. Anyway. Then suddenly, she was on her feet, feeling his warm blood splash her legs and naked thighs, while he screeched and released her hair and tried to halt the pumping gout of blood. She reared back and spit away the stinking stump. Yes. He howled like a mutilated animal. She loved the sound. She loved the cooling gore across her thighs. And then in an instant, she was rushing toward the entrance to the cave, her mouth an angry, wild grin, unmindful of the woman who seemed to rise up out of nowhere to clutch at her, unmindful even of the huge bald man who was weak from loss of blood and unable to stop her. I don't know. I just was like, that was so perfectly written. Bob Apples agrees. The jerk off deserved it. Yes. And the way it was written is satisfying too. Like, just very poetic too in a way. Like, I know that sounds absurd. Like saying like this gory scene is poetic, but like, come on. Like, had she believed in God, she might have felt grateful and she closed her eyes and felt her hatred in her jaw like a clenched fist. I don't know. I really like the way that just like was unfolded in terms of how it was written and the words that were used. And he never says the word penis right there. Like, she spit away the stinking stump. So it's kind of like, dancing around it, but not really. So it works in a multitude of ways, in my opinion. Daisy says, I'm pretty sure I screamed when I read that. LOL, he earned that. Yes, yes. I didn't scream because I read that part like while I was in bed laying down and my boyfriend was sleeping next to me and I was like, I can't just scream about somebody getting their dick bit off in the middle of the night, which is even more absurd to be reading it at that time. But yes. Just a lot of good passages. Do you guys like that Ketchum had Nick die? Of course, that's the big change everyone talks about. That's the big change that Ketchum said was omitted. Like, Nick supposedly lives in the old version, the original version that was originally published, whereas in the unedited, uncensored version, he is officially pronounced dead. There's no question about it. Do you guys like that? Or would you have liked a happier ending, like a more uplifting ending? What do you guys think about the end in general? Yay, Crystal's here. We were just talking about you earlier, Crystal. I read your review on Goodreads. I hope that was okay. She says, hey, she's late to the cannibal party. Oh, we're just glad you're here no matter when you arrive. We're so happy. Again, just to plug one more time, check out her channel. Here it is, spelled out officially. This is her YouTube channel name. Check her out. Type it in the search bar and you will find her channel. Awesome channel. One of my favorite voices in terms of so calm, so relaxing to listen to, and great taste in books. And also, by the way, not just a horror reader, which I find very nice because I am such a one-note reader at this point. However, I will say, just to tease, my aim is to be more like Crystal and others who kind of are more well-rounded. I'm going to read a couple of other things next year. This is kind of a spoiler, but not really. It's so far away from when I'm going to make this video. But part of my goals for 2023 will be to read some non-horror books. Like I want to make a list of like 10 books to read that are like, some non-fiction books. And I know some other books too. Like I can't even recall. Oh yes, I want to read Star Trek: The Next Generation books. I want to read some like Dawson's Creek books, which is ridiculous. Whatever. Plagued by Visions is here. Juan, how you doing, Juan? We were just talking about your channel a little while ago. I read some of your review and I was saying how eloquent you were. Like, what the heck? You're so, the way you talk about books, it's just like blows me away sometimes. So I was reading some of your review and just the way it was written, I was like, oh, this is like the most analytical, like academically written, but poetic review ever. So like, leave it to Juan to talk about a book about cannibals in such an elegant way. But I think it fits because Jack Ketchum himself, I feel like, writes in a very elegant way, although he's writing about very gory and graphic things. So I feel like it's so appropriate that Juan's review of this type of book is also, in the same way, very elegant. Katie says, I loved that he died at the end. We're talking about the character Nick. She says, I felt it was the perfect ending. Nothing in the story was right or fair, so why should the ending be? So right, and it just lets you kind of contemplate on the reality of things. The reality of things was you've got this group of family flowing out of the cave, attacking police officers. To me, it seems totally realistic that they're going to accidentally shoot someone who is actually a good person, especially because he was all bloodied up. It was just chaos all around the cave. They didn't know what was going on. And so I feel like it is a bleak ending, but you still have a little bit of hope. You still have Margie, in the ambulance and, making her way out of that terrible scene. So there's that. But I like that Nick gets it. And that sounds terrible the way I just said it like that. But again, I think is more realistic. And I like a bleak ending. And Crystal agrees with me. She says the same thing. Yeah, I like a bleak ending. Me too. One says, don't worry, I sometimes review a book like book good, me like as well. But yes, I think this book really tapped into a visceral kind of fear that most horror authors just gesture towards. So well said, Juan. I agree with you. And I was before you were commenting, I was reading some quotes and just the way he like describes things, like when he was talking about the crab and how the crab had found its evil niche. Like, I just think that was so, like, well said and, like, such a poetic way to talk about, like, something that was bigger than what was discussed in the book, like, bigger than what was spelled out, I should say. I just love that. It was, like, alluding to something more, and I love that. I love when horror authors do that. But I know, once again, we've got Monster Blood in the chat who does kind of disagree. Ketchum's style isn't his favorite style overall. And I love hearing the different opinions on that, like why somebody would think one way. And speaking of Monster Blood, here is a snippet of his review, which I did screen capture. So Austin said, going into this book, I was super excited. This is my first Jack Ketchum book. I always look forward to reading a new author for the first time, especially by a more popular / famous one. Was looking forward to the theme of the novel. I love movies like TCM, Wrong Turn, Hills Have Eyes, etc. So I went into this with high hopes and was a bit disappointed. It wasn't bad by any means, and I was actually quite surprised at how well written some of it was, but it was just different than I had expected. It wasn't as suspenseful or frightening as I had hoped. There wasn't really any slow build of tension or nail biting moments. The few scenes in the book that should have been suspenseful didn't really do much for me. Instead, this book just felt like more of a B grade horror flick with lots of action and gore and dismemberment. The first half of the novel is just character introduction and interaction with some foreshadowing of what's to come. And then after that, it just plunges straight into a chaotic fight for survival against the clan of inbred cannibalistic freaks. So he gave it a 3 out of 5. I understand, like, in a way, some parts are kind of like action packed, really quick, fast paced. However, like, to me, it just never felt like it dragged. And to me, I still felt like it was overall very, very well written for me personally. But I can see all sides of the spectrum. And I love hearing that other side of the coin. Love that. Really do. By the way, do I have one more review? Yes, I think I have Mother Horror's review. Sadie. Yeah, is that who I have here? It's hard to see on my little screen who I actually have. Oh, and this is the rest of Monster Blood's review. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, but it's not a bad book. Decent horror read for those who can stomach the darker, more extreme side of it. Just not the masterpiece I was looking for. Aside from the couple of issues I mentioned, the lack of character development and sometimes over-the-top violence, I think really just comes down to a matter of taste. I think that's true. The fact that this book didn't really draw me in or scare me leaves me giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I might read it again in the future to see if I can get something more out of it because I really wanted to like it more than I did. And so here's Sadie. Sadie gave it a 4 out of 5, and she's like, the kind of ultimate word on horror fiction, so I like seeing what she has to say. She likes it. As you can see, she just kind of mentions some of the pros and cons. She says, it's a very... Well, let me see where do I want to start here. I don't want to read the whole thing. I'm gonna read starting at the second paragraph, a little further down. The kill scenes are brutal, but more intense than the graphic depictions of violence are the up-close and personal real-time experiences of the victims as they are being tortured, burned, and eaten alive. More than once, one of the characters expressed a thought or an idea that hit way too close to home. Ketchum truly thinks about what he's putting his characters through and then uses their struggle to reach right out from the page and poke at the reader. I agree with that 100%. I felt everything. It's a very disturbing emotional experience. I don't feel this is a 5-star read like Red was for me because the storyline is not as complicated, or I've got the rest of it here. Or maybe I have it here too. Oh, or intricately, I can speak, guys, plotted, no twists, no turns, just one bleak moment after the other. But I'm here for it, personally. And to me, after I read it, there are certain books when I read it where I just feel like this was such an easy read. There was no effort into it. It felt pleasant. Even though I'm reading about this terrible stuff, it was intriguing. It was making me want to turn the page. It was making me not want to put it down. So those type of reads, I just so easily can rate them a 5 stars. Even if there might technically be some flaws, it was just like the way I felt while reading it, it was like an easy 5 for me personally. Bob Apples gave it a solid 4 stars, given my memory being refreshed. 4 ain't bad. Like I said, Sadie gave it a 4. Crystal gave it a 4. Lots of 4s. I think 4s are so good. I mean, what did I just read that I gave a 4 that I liked? Oh yeah, 20th anniversary screening by Jeff Strand. I read that recently, as in yesterday, and I gave that a 4 out of 5. And to me, that's a good rating. So I gave lots of books. In fact, I've got I'm not trying to spoil my May wrap up, but I gave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. Well, 4 books and a short story. No, it's a standalone book as well. They released it as a short story and a standalone book. I gave 4 things 4 stars. So I do that a lot, and I enjoyed all the ones I gave 4 stars. I mean, heck, I enjoy stuff that I give 3.5 stars. Now, 3 is it's dipping into the it was okay kind of area. So I don't know. I know I think star ratings mean different things to different people. I do find it difficult to rate books, but I actually have an easier time with books than rating movies. Rating movies is like excruciating for me. Like I look at my letterboxd and I've got some movies rated and some not. And I've got a lot of movies that people would consider 5-star movies rated as a 3.5. And what I guess my 3.5 means for a movie is that I liked it and enjoyed it, and I might have thought it was great, but I probably won't ever need to watch it again, most likely. So, like, a 3.5 movie could be really good for me, or like technically a very sound film, in my opinion, or a very well made film, in my opinion, but like, it still doesn't mean that like it's up there for me, that it's a rewatchable movie for me personally. So, yeah. I don't know. I do struggle with rating movies. I'm always like, but should 3.5 really like should a movie that I think is pretty well made be a 4 instead of 3.5? So I just kind of battle with myself about that and what my ratings mean. Books, I don't know why. I do have a little bit easier of a time, I should say. Today has been such a day. This is some good analysis here. Juan bringing in the analysis. Again, check out his channel, just to plug one more time. Plagued by Visions, you could find his channel by searching that in your little YouTube search bar. If you're not somehow already not subscribed, you got to be subscribed if not. So Juan says, what most stuck to me about the spit roast scene is that Ketchum switches from a clinical observation of the scene to plunging us right into the victim's mind. We get the piercing cold against her naked skin, the welling fear inside her mind, and her horrifying vulnerability. Ketchum knows it's not solely the gory details that horrify, it's also their effect. So well said, Juan. You said it better than I could read it. So, yes. I knew as soon as I saw that he wrote vulnerability, I knew I was going to mess it up because I cannot say that word very well. It's a tongue twister for me. All the time, anytime I say it. All right, guys, I want to know before we wrap things up, because at 8 o'clock, there's a basketball game on, and I want to have some time to keep reading the book I'm reading. It's like my only time to read tonight. After that, we might watch, Ozark after the basketball game, but while the basketball game's on, I could read some, so I don't want to go too long, so I could read more of my book. I know that's selfish, but I'm not trying to cut you guys off. If you want more to say in the comments, please drop your thoughts, your ratings, anything you want to say about off season. Are you guys going to check out the sequel? Have you already checked out the sequel? Juan, have you read? I know you read a lot of Ketchum books. So have you read the sequel to Off Season? And I think it's more than one sequel, right? I know Juan has dug in to a lot of Ketchum. I'm actually looking up on Goodreads right now. Yes, it is more than one book, I think. Yes, there's Off Season. It says book 1.5, Off Season, the unexpurgated edition. Probably messing that up. What is the difference between that and what I read? Anyway, then there's Offspring, which is the official book 2. Then there's book 3, The Woman. So yes, according to Goodreads, 3 books. And I guess, I don't know what this book 1.5 is. It seems like it's just Off Season, but another unedited version of it. And yes, Juan has read both Offspring and The Woman. Did you like them, Juan? Did you like them? I'm sure you've talked about it on your channel, guys. We should also, promote going to check out what he has to say about other Ketchum books on his channel. Crystal says, I haven't read the sequels, but I'm curious to see what's next. Me too. And that's why I definitely want to get to it at one point. And like I said, at this point, I'd read anything by Ketchum. I honestly like his style quite a bit. I will say a book that I know Crystal's read because I saw her review. Cover, which is technically considered a slasher. That's by Jack Ketchum. I'd love to read that in the future. I'm not officially, trying to read that this month because my TBR is outrageous and it's so ridiculous. There's no way I'm going to get to it. I've already read, an okay amount of Ketchum this year. I wouldn't mind reading more, but it's like, I'm trying to not just, read one kind of author at a time. Although I am reading a ton of freaking King with my King reading project, but I feel like I need to read more King, and my friend Kat loves King, and that's like, it was her idea to do the project, so I feel like I'm getting, more well-versed in one of the most popular horror authors ever, so. Juan says, The Woman is great. Offspring, he hasn't read since high school, so he'll be rereading it soon. That's exciting, one. I can't wait to see like your updated thoughts on that. And yep, Jack Ketchum is Juan's favorite horror author. And yeah, I knew you loved him. I want to read so much more by him. I'm just loving everything so far. Just it surprised me by I knew he was great. Okay, I heard great things about his work, but it just surprised me by how much I loved it more than I even thought I possibly could. Just I just really dig the way he writes. All right, so I did want to. What was I going to point out before I left? It was important too. I don't want to forget. Oh, by the way, this is something I want to ask you guys, and it's about off season. So when I was researching for my big slasher readathon and watchathon that's happening this month, I saw on a lot of slasher book recommendation lists off season listed as a slasher book. I don't personally like think this is a slasher. What do you guys think? Why do you think people would put it in a, on a list of slasher books? Do you personally consider it a slasher, or do you think it has slasher elements? To me, just the whole essence of that there's a group of people going after another group of people already right there, it doesn't feel like a traditional slasher. However, something that I talked about very much in depth with my friend Kat last year. So last year I didn't do a readathon of slashers, but I did do a big slasher movie marathon, or movie watchathon you could call it. And Kat and I watched a whole bunch of slasher movies, and how we chose the movies we were going to watch was, through research. So we looked up online lists, other movies we knew were slashers, like, Sleepaway Camp is definitely a slasher. Other movies like we saw Terrifier on a list with Art the Clown. That movie was on a list. And also this movie called Bloody Birthday was on a list. And Alone in the Dark was on a list of slasher movies that were underrated. Well, come to find out, we watched some of these movies and we also got so intrigued. Like, first, the thing that started making us question it was we see Terrifier with Art the Clown, and this isn't a spoiler, but there is a gun used in the movie at one point, and usually guns are not used in slasher movies very much. So we were like, is this really a slasher? Like, he doesn't seem like your normal slasher villain like Michael Myers or yada yada. So we were kind of, our interest was piqued a little bit. So we ended up going and researching what makes a slasher movie a slasher movie. So there are, a lot of websites don't agree on that at all. And that makes sense to me because I feel like it is very subjective whether you think something is a slasher or not. It really depends on what, you consider to be a slasher trope or not, and what elements have to be there for you to consider it a slasher. But the one thing that all the websites had in common were, well, slasher movies are subgenre of horror. That's it. I was like, okay, well, thanks. That's all you got? But other websites really broke it down. In fact, this one website was real. I think it was called like thefinalgirls.com or something. We have a whole chat about it. I have this slasher playlist on my YouTube channel homepage. It's right underneath my new upload. So you go to my homepage, you'll see uploads, and underneath it says slasher themed uh, videos or whatever I called the playlist. Anyway, that's right on my homepage. So if you're interested, I think it was called like breaking down slasher tropes or taking a look behind the mask and breaking down slasher tropes. Anyway, it's on that playlist right there on my homepage. If you're curious, we talked about the article. We showed the article on the screen, and there's a whole bunch of primary requirements according to this website standards, which make a movie or a slasher movie. And there's a whole bunch of secondary elements that can be there. They don't have to be there, but if they're there, it makes the movie even more of a slasher in this site's definition of what is a slasher. So I found that to be fascinating, that all these sites had these different criteria. I feel like the same way about horror fiction, you can, consider a whole bunch of different things a slasher or not. I think it really just depends on how you feel and what you consider to be a slasher. One, I agree with this. I agree with you here. So one says, I guess the latter half becomes a body count affair of sorts, as with slashers, but home invasion horror is more accurate in his opinion. And I agree with that. I do think it's more home invasion, and obviously it's like cannibals. And to me, I think of this as a cannibal book more than like a slasher book. Katie also agrees with us. She personally would not call Off Season a slasher. I usually consider one killer causing multiple kills a slasher. Me too. And that's why I think it's really hard when you haven't read a book and you're trying to make a list of slasher books to actually know if something you put on the list is actually a slasher or not. So, guys, if you are someone who's looked at my slasher recommendation doc, at least I did specify what I have read and what I have not read. So, any books listed on that recommendation list that I have not read, please take with a grain of salt in that you may read it and think, hey, wait a second, Kelsi, this is not a slasher. However, I did leave Off Season off the list only because, in my opinion, I was like, well, I read it and my observation of it and my conclusion personally is that it's not like a slasher, in my opinion. However, if you guys want to think it's a slasher, I will not stop anybody from thinking that. I don't mind that at all. Again, I love hearing other opinions and analysis. It never bothers me. I will say another book that I saw was called The Slasher. A lot of people consider a lot of Richard Lehman's books slashers. So, and Katie, you've read this book, so maybe you could weigh in on this. People were saying like Endless Night was a slasher on some lists, not every list I looked up, but in a few like Reddit posts, like or threads, whatever you want to call it, some of them listed it as a slasher. And I was like, what? I've read Endless Night, and to me, you do have one protagonist at a point, but you start off with not protagonist, antagonist. You got one antagonist that pops up at a certain point in the story, but you also have a group of antagonists as well. And I think that's very prominent. It just never felt like a slasher to me. But I feel like you could make more of an argument for Endless Night than you can for Off Season, in my opinion only. It is what it is. I'd love to know if you guys have read Endless Night, if you think that one's a slasher or not either. By the way, if you have not read Endless Night, that is my favorite Richard Lehman read so far. I've read 3 books by Richard Lehman as of right now. The 3 are Endless Night, which was my first one, loved it. Then last month, my other book club pick, which, by the way, guys, I am going to have a live stream discussion of my book club pick, The Cellar. So The Cellar is the second book, no, the third book by Richard Lehman I read. The second one in between those two I read was Funland by Richard Lehman. I did not like Funland. I really didn't. I thought it was kind of boring, kind of slow, and it wasn't as cozy, crazy as his other books are, in my opinion. So I feel like, mostly Richard Lehman is a good time, but you do get like a stinker, I think, because I did not like, but some people love Funland. So maybe it was just me, maybe it was just my mood, I don't know, but I didn't personally love it. So, just to go back to the train of thought, I might change the date for if you guys have read The Cellar with me for the book club by Richard Lehman. I might change my live stream date. It was supposed to be next Thursday. Stand by. If I do change it, I will post it on my community tab. My boyfriend's going out of town like the very next day, and I don't know if I want to stream like on his last night in town before he goes on this trip, so we'll see. All right, so Katie weighs in and says, I would probably call Endless Night a home invasion. Me too. I could see how the second part of the book could be a slasher, but she doesn't know, and I don't know either. She agrees with me. There's more of a case with this book, Endless Night, than there is with Off Season. Yeah, so we're on the same page on that, but yeah, you could make an argument, but I do overall consider it more home invasion as well. I mean, Endless Night starts off with a bang. Page 1, you get this home invasion. Like, maybe it was page 2, but it's right away. And you're like, holy shit, like, we're getting thrown into the action, like, literally right away. Like, if you're looking for something that takes no time to develop any character stuff, then Endless Night, oh my god, it goes in right away. I love that book so much. It was such a good time. One says, Kelsi, you recommended a disturbing book in our collab called Such Nice People. I'm dying to read it because the premise sounds a lot like something Jack Ketchum would write. It is very good, Juan, but it is kind of a slow burn. Like my friend Kelly over at Kelly Hooked on Books. Check out her YouTube channel too, by the way. She also runs a wonderful book club called the From Hell Book Club. Love her book club because she focuses on vintage horror and like paperbacks from hell. That's why it's called the From Hell Book Club. So I love that she focuses on that. Like, obviously, for our club here, the Midnight Book Society, we do focus on old horror, but I feel like we also focus on new horror. Like, we did read The Troop. We did read Stolen Tongues, which are newer books. But I love focusing on old horror, too, when I can. But yeah, Kelly always focuses on old horror with her book club. So I totally recommend checking out her club, her channel, and her Instagram. But yeah, She read that one and she thought it was really, really slow and she almost DNF'd it. But then she said, like, the ending is worth it. But I just like I was there for like the family drama and the character development. But like once we get near the end, I'm like, oh crap, like the shed scene. Like there's something that happens in the shed. I won't go into it. But yes, I hope you can find a copy one. I actually found it not in a bookstore. I found it online for like a cheap price, which is rare because it usually goes for quite a bit online, but I lucked out and I did pay more for it than I usually like to pay in terms of used books online, but I really wanted to read it, so like I snagged it. I was like, "Hell yeah." And it's one of my favorite covers, so I'm just happy to own it. But I hope you can find a copy because it's really really good. But again, I don't want to build it up too much because some people thought it was like a slow burn. Some people didn't like it as much as me. Daisy asks and says, I haven't read Stolen Tongues yet. Did you like it? Yes, I did like Stolen Tongues quite a bit. I will say there is a part that drags where it like the action slows down a little bit, but overall very effective in terms of if well, effective if certain things freak you out. Like to me, stuff having to do with people doing things in their sleep that freaks me out. And so in that way, parts of the book that had to deal with like things going on when someone's supposed to be sleeping, someone like not being in control of like their body while they're sleeping or what's going on while they're sleeping, that like bothers me. And so that is why I love Stolen Tongues. I did think it was a great winter read. It was very atmospheric. I do recommend it. I mean, I would even recommend it for people who don't like love horror because I think you could read that even like if you're on the outskirts of being like a horror reader, if that makes sense. If you're just like into thrillers, I think that could be a good book for people. So like if I didn't like my friend Teresa kind of dips her toe into like horror books. I suggested Stolen Tongues to her, but I don't know if she read it. But I hope she does because I think she'd like it. One says, I'm actively on the hunt for an affordable copy of Such Nice People. I'm got my fingers crossed for you. And he says, an off season, for all its, grisly detail, is actually a bit of a slow burn too. Would you agree? Actually, the beginning is because you do get time with the characters, time at the cabin, and even time with the family watching, just watching. But to me, that although it's a slowish burn, there's a feeling of dread there, though, for sure. But I felt like a feeling of dread in Such Nice People too. But maybe Kelly didn't feel it as much, and that's why she wanted to DNF. I don't know, but I did feel like a feeling of dread in both Off Season and in Such Nice People. And I think that's what makes an entertaining horror book is when you're feeling like that dread. And I think that's what was missing for Monster Blood was the dread, and like it just didn't live up to his expectations specifically. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up just because I'm losing my voice a little bit and because I want to go read Brother. So again, like that's what I'm about to go read after I'm done. Thank you so much, guys, for anyone who read this with me this past month. I really appreciate you guys joining in for this book club. Thanks all of you who are in the chat. Thanks anybody watching after the fact on demand. Basically, thank you to everybody. I really just love interacting with you guys. It wouldn't be the same. Like I would still love Off Season if I just read it alone, not knowing I would have anyone to talk about it with. But there's something extra special knowing I get to talk about it with you guys, at the beginning of the next month. It just makes it a more rich, a more nuanced discussion and the experience really. It makes it a more nuanced whole layered thing for me. And that's why I enjoy these book club reads. So thank you all so very much. Really appreciate it. Good night, everybody. Good night, Crystal. Good night, Juan. Good night, Daisy. Good night, Katie. Everyone who was in the chat who might be gone now, or who might have stopped commenting. Monster Blood, Bob Apples, Helco, DJ, Cool Gamer. Thank you all. I really appreciate you guys. And again, till next time, guys, you guys know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys.